Hey, it's Patti Scharf, CPA and co-founder of Catching Clouds, the leader on e-commerce accounting. Today we're going to talk about sales tax again. If you haven't already checked it out, we've got this great video that Scott and I did a few days ago, shortly after the U.S. Supreme Court came back with their ruling on the South Dakota versus Wayfair case, where they set up basically the standard for what needs to happen for charging sales tax for online sellers, and frankly all sellers, but we focus on online sellers because that's what we do. So today we're just going to go over some of the questions and answers that we've been seeing. There's been a flurry of activity, lots of articles, lots of chatter on different forums and Facebook and different things. And so we thought we'd tackle the most common questions that we've seen and see if we can get you guys some answers. So let's get started. So the first question is, so does this mean that sellers now have to start collecting sales tax? Well, this is kind of a funky question because it implies that they didn't have to collect sales tax previously, but they actually did. If you have physical nexus, so what that is a business presence in a particular city, county, state, you have a legal obligation to collect sales tax in those jurisdictions. So how do you know if you have physical nexus? That's where you have property, that's where you have inventory, that's where you have affiliates, salespeople, employees, things like that, things that actually tie you to the state. So a lot of people wanted to kind of pretend that they didn't have to collect sales tax, or they took the attitude that, well, you know, let them come and get me. I'm too small to be worried about, or something like that. So it is true that people in those situations had to collect sales tax. What this ruling did was it added a new concept called economic nexus. So there are some states who were trying to say, hey, you're tied to our state by virtue of the fact that we see sales going on in our state. If you weren't tied to our state, then we wouldn't be seeing these sales. So collect this sales tax and pay up. So that's what you're seeing with some of these other states, like South Dakota, where they have, hey, if you're selling at least $100,000 or have 200 transactions in our state, then you have a filing obligation in our state. Again, check out that video that I told you about because we go into a lot more detail about that. The next question. Oh, so does that replace the physical nexus thing? So a lot of people have this misconception that because of this court case, now we're paying attention to economic nexus and we don't have to worry about the physical nexus. And that's not true. Both are in effect. So you need to pay attention to both of those situations. One last very important bonus tip for you on this is that you need to remember to register in each of these states that you're planning on filing in before you actually start collecting sales tax. Because if you don't have a sales tax license to collect sales tax, collecting sales tax without one is illegal. It's a criminal act. So I recommend you try to avoid that. The next question is, are small sellers exempt? You would think so. Logic would kind of lead you to believe that, but here's the problem. It kind of depends how you define small seller, and what might be a small seller in one state might not be a small seller in another state. You really have to look at the nexus rules in each of those individual states to see whether you're considered a small seller. Everybody is equal under the law. This applies across the board to everybody. But if you go below those thresholds, then yes, you would be exempt, but you need to keep an eye on it because as you grow, you might exceed it. So you need to pay attention to that. If you stick around to the end of this video, we'll give you a link to something that can help you kind of see what those thresholds are and see if it might apply to you. The next question is, what if I sell wholesale? So here's the deal. If you're selling your products to somebody else and they are selling it to the ultimate consumer, the end user of that product, the person you're selling it to is the one who's responsible for collecting and remitting sales tax. However, when you are applying these Nexus rules, it's my understanding that you need to pay attention to your total gross sales. So even if you are only selling to wholesalers, you need to take a look. Let's say I'm selling $1 million and I meet actually, let's make it huge, $100 million, and I'm selling to all these different customers in these different states. I need to have, because I'm exceeding their thresholds, I'm going to need to register to file returns in their state. When I'm filing the sales tax returns, I can list on the return, hey, this much is exempt because somebody else is selling the product to the end user, and so you won't have to actually collect tax and remit it, but that doesn't mean that you're out of the responsibility for actually registering and filing a zero return or something like that. One more comment about that. If you are selling wholesale, you need to make sure that you have on file a copy of a resale tax exemption certificate for every single customer that you're selling wholesale to. Otherwise, you're not supposed to be exempt from collecting and remitting sales tax for that person or company. What if my products aren't taxable? This is the exact same situation as the wholesaler. You have to count all of the sales of your products, all of the money that you make from that. If your products happen to not be subject to tax, then you just don't charge your customers tax and you don't remit it. But that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you're meeting those Nexus thresholds that we were talking about before. So if all of the products that you're selling are exempt from tax and you're selling $10 million worth, then chances are you're going to need to register, file for sales tax, even if you don't collect and remit that tax. So the next question is, can't Amazon just collect everywhere for me? So some of you may know already that Amazon will collect and remit the sales tax in Washington State and in Pennsylvania, and soon they're going to be doing that in Oklahoma as well. So a lot of people feel like, yay, now I don't have to worry about Washington or Pennsylvania or soon to be Oklahoma. And here's the problem with that. All that Amazon is doing is collecting and remitting the sales tax. It is not filing the tax returns for you. It is not including any sales tax that you may have collected on Shopify or eBay or BigCommerce or anywhere else. So you still have this filing obligation regardless of who's collecting and remitting the sales tax. So what's going to end up happening is when you file your sales tax returns, you're going to say, hey, Amazon paid in this much, I paid in this much, here's the amount that's due or overpaid or it's just right. And that's how you're going to get your returns filed. So it doesn't actually make things any easier at all. If anything, I'd say it makes things a little bit more complex. So then the next question is, all right, so I've got to go look at all these rules, all the individual rules for each of these 45 states, and I have to figure out who I need to collect and remit tax, and I need to figure out how I'm going to get that all filed and stuff, and then I file it, and I've paid all the registration fees, and I pay whatever other fees come up, and then what, my nightmare, this super expensive, administrative, annoyingly painful process is over, right? I hate to break it to you, but chances are the states are going to start coming after you for income tax or franchise tax. So this is going to be a huge problem for years to come unless Congress steps in and does something different. So I hate to break it to you, but the nightmare is just beginning. Okay, so last question, where can I go for help? If you've been reading any of the articles, watching any videos or anything, they're probably all advising you to go to a sales and local tax expert. We advise the same thing. We are not actually sales and local tax experts. We know a lot about it because it's really important to our customers and all we do is e-commerce. So we're super tuned into this process and everything. But if you have questions on your particular situation, you definitely need to go see an actual sales and local tax expert. We have links to some of our favorites down below. We also have links to some tools that can help aid you in the filing process. Avalara, Taxify, TaxJar, those are the big three. So there are links to those down below as well. We also have a download. You can get to a link to it down below. And it's basically a spreadsheet that gives you the general rules as of today in all these different states, what their thresholds are and things like that. You'll definitely want to check in with a sales and local tax expert, a SALT expert, to make sure that you're doing things the right way if you are at all confused about the process or need some help navigating the waters. So I hope you liked this video and that it helped. If you did like it, please show us some love by liking, sharing, commenting. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do, and we will catch you later.